this is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed Human.
Lowe's knows Sundays are for football. So tackle your home improvement projects by Saturday and earn your Sunday with great deals on LG and Bosch appliances, select Bounty and Swiffer cleaning products, and more. Then once your to-do list is done, get ready to kick back, relax, and enjoy the game. Shop in-store or online now and earn your Sunday with help from Lowe's, official partner of the NFL.
Hi, I'm Steph, and I work at United Healthcare. When I think about United Healthcare's members, I think of my own family. My niece was diagnosed with an ultra-rare genetic disorder. I know how hard it is for families. At United Healthcare, we can make it easier.
I'm Brian. I care because I know what it's like to not speak the language. It's not easy. Health insurance is complicated. I would say our job is to make everything easy for our UHC members. I work for United Healthcare. I'm committed to care.
JJ, kids are wearing baggy clothes. There's a new 007 video game out, and my New York Knicks are in the NBA Finals. The 90s are back, baby, and we all know the 90s is the GOAT decade.
Yeah, great movies in the 90s, including The Mighty Ducks, right? You had D1 that came out, the original Mighty Ducks, which was a good movie, solid, right? You had D2, which was the better movie, kind of like Becoming a Best Ball Bro, where season 1, pretty good season, but then season 2 happens, and, you know, I had a great finish in the Millie. We had great results in Best Ball last year. Let's just hope that season 3 doesn't go like D3. I'm JJ, and over the last couple of years, I've been doing everything I can to be a Best Ball Bro. And last season, things finally fell into place. I got 40th in the DraftKings Millie contest, taking home $20,000. Maybe I became a Best Ball Bro, but I'm still looking to learn more about this game. And I still want others to come on this ride with me. So even if you consider me a Best Ball Bro, this could be your year. This could be the year that you officially become a Best Ball Bro. This episode is sponsored by DraftKings. We've partnered up with DraftKings again this year for Best Ball, and we've got a can't-miss offer on their biggest Best Ball contest ever. $20 million in total prizes. It's draft one, get one. Draft your team once, no weekly lineup management, and your top scorers start automatically each week, all season long. Download the DraftKings Daily Fantasy app and sign up with promo code LATEROUND. Enter a lineup in the $20 million Best Ball contest for $25 and get a bonus ticket for a second entry. 2 shots at the title. Draft one, get one, only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. Welcome into another episode of Becoming a Best Ball Bro. I'm JJ Zacharyson, joined as always by Rich Ryan. Rich, great to see your face. How's it going, buddy?
Likewise, buddy. Things are amazing. The World Series of Poker started last week. As we said at the top, or as I said at the top, the Knicks are in the NBA Finals. I literally can't believe it. And it's best ball season. I could not ask for anything else.
It is funny every time we do, because this is season 3 for those of you who have not been following the Becoming a Best Ball Bro journey. And hopefully you heard from the intro that this is a little bit different, because I don't want to frame this show as, you know, I don't want to say I've officially become a Best Ball Bro. I don't think that's happened per se. I don't think anyone really has officially become a Best Ball Bro, just because you're always iterating, you're always trying to get better. But it would be kind of disingenuous for me to just say, like, I'm still going on this adventure of, I've now max entered multiple years now. And then last year I had good success over on DraftKings, you know, advanced, I think, what was it, like 48 out of 150 Millie lineups that I drafted, and was able to get 40th in the Millie in the final. And so, like, it seems a little weird if I'm just kind of framing this show the same way. So instead, let's just keep doing this show, because number one, a lot of people were asking for it and a lot of people dig it. And I dig it too, because I like learning from some of the best in the business that are doing and drafting, you know, these best ball teams. But like, let's see if others that are listening want to, you know, take the next step in drafting a few more teams and doing a little bit more. Maybe you've entered 50 Millie lineups in the past and you want to do 100 this year, whatever the case may be. You know, I'm just very excited to be behind the mic for this specific show once again.
And best ball itself is ever changing. The strategies with which people deploy in that season are going to differ from the year before because the NFL is changing. And I think that's one of the things we'll get in today, or at least I want to bring up with one of the position groups. And I mean, just during this show, the one thing that has been a revolutionary change for me is the approach of fading zeros. That's been like a big thing that I've had to learn. And it's like the vegetables that I've had to eat, where like in the past, I'm like just hunting spike weeks and max points at all times. But there's a little bit of, we don't have the ability like we do in season long to make any transaction. So you better be fading the guys who are going to give you absolutely nothing throughout the season.
Yeah, I mean, like, I think that last year in particular, because again, year one, I didn't have the best season in the world, but last year had a great season. And last year, and having a good season, you have a lot more teams in the playoffs that you're tracking. You have a lot more that you're, cross-referencing as you get into weeks 15, 16, and 17. And when you're going through in the playoffs, because we always talk about how in best ball, it's like a quarter of the season is really weeks 1 through 14. Like it's a giant part of the season, but that's serious. That's just a quarter of the pie, because then you advance, or you hope to advance. And then week 15 happens, you hope to advance 16 and 17. But with that being said, like when you have those teams in the playoffs and you're staring them at the face, you do see firsthand very clearly how important it is to not have dead assets on your team. Now, injuries are going to happen. I get all of that. But there is a very clear difference in the way that you should be drafting the players on your in your best ball lineups versus how you might approach things from a season long perspective. It's just a completely different mindset. And of course, there's going to be plenty of overlap. A guy that I generally like in fantasy football this year, I'm probably going to like in both formats. But there are some players, maybe like an early down grinder at running back that is a 12th round pick that I'm not going to care about at all from a season long perspective, because I don't think the predictability is going to be there. I don't think the ceiling is super, super massive for that player. I'm thinking about like the Jordan Masons of the world, the Chris Rodriguez's of the world. I don't love them in season long, but I will draft them much more frequently in best ball because the spiked week appeal is certainly there. Now it's a little bit more difficult on a platform like DraftKings where you're getting a full point per reception. But regardless, like the season long, the spike week appeal is still there because they can fall into the end zone a couple of times or break off a decent chunk run and be able to score some fantasy points for that week. And you don't have to predict it, right? And your games or your team stacking, and maybe I drafted Trevor Lawrence and I just want to get more Jags, or maybe I got Kyler and Justin Jefferson and I want some more Vikings. And so I do think that like you and I both have learned a lot from, I've been interviewing folks, on the show. We've talked about it. Every episode is going to be formatted the same this year, where Rich and I open up the show to just have a conversation, talk about what's going on and what we're seeing in drafts at the moment. And then I'll interview some best ball, like true best ball bro in the space, which today we're not doing that. We're just kind of introing all of this. But next week, I'll kick it off with, I think, the same person that I've kicked off every season of Becoming Best Ball Bro with, Pat Kerrane, who's had a lot of success playing best ball. But, I'll talk to Kerrane next week and we'll dig into things and such. And hopefully all of us kind of learn and we are successful. And most importantly, we just enjoy the heck out of it. It's a very fun time of year to be, into fantasy football, to be drafting, to have the camaraderie, to, agree and disagree. I'll be doing live streams again very, very soon on the YouTube channel, where I'll be drafting teams. And I think that alone for me is kind of everything with what this is all about. It's like the having people jumping in consistently on the live streams and having conversations with them. And, we're talking like retro video games sometimes we're talking about, whatever the case may be, but we're talking ball along the way. And it's fun. And actually the coolest thing about that was last year, the team that I found a lot of success with was live streamed. Like it is literally on YouTube, and you can watch it if you want, but you can see the logic. And there were some clicks that I made where I'm like I had Derrick Henry in that lineup, and I think I was at like 6%, 7% Derrick Henry last year. And I was like, yeah, I guess I'll take Henry. I need a little bit more exposure. Well, he was the reason why I won $20,000 in that lineup, And so you can kind of see the thought process behind it all. And I think that's what's most important, with this whole thing.
Best ball is also great exercise for your fall drafts as well, because you get to use those muscles. You get to feel the board. You get to see how drafts are coming, right? Like mock drafts, when we get closer to it, if you get into a mock draft lobby, it's going to be complete chaos, right? Like people are just going to do random things because there's nothing at stake. There's no skin in the game for them to take it seriously. But
Yeah,
through
yeah.
best ball, which is a sharper market anyway, like it is a really good way to exercise those muscles and get an understanding of how drafts are going to flow.
Yeah, I think back, I remember when I first started as like a fantasy analyst, I would, in like this was back, I started in like 2012, 2011. This would have been back in like 2014, 2015. I used to go to ESPN and just drop a mock draft lobby link for people to join me in a mock draft, right? And I think back to that and I'm like, the landscape has evolved so much. Like that was like the way that we would practice having drafts, that we would like experience, and then we could share lineups and stuff like that. And now it's really just best ball. It's best ball because we're putting money on the line, skin in the game. We know that other people are doing the same. But fortunately, there are still people out there that are drafting that don't necessarily know exactly what's going on. And that's helpful for us to increase our win rate. So I like, this is a game where if you put in some research and if you see what's going, like you really understand the landscape and how to build lineups, like you can have an edge. This is not a throw a dart and let's pray. There's obviously going to be some of that involved with like late round picks and stuff like that. But team composition is unbelievably important. Some of the things that I go back to that lineup because that is the lineup that, allowed me to have the most success last year, obviously in best ball. But like there was a player, like I had DJ Moore on that team. I didn't draft much DJ Moore at all, but it was a game stack situation because I had drafted, Christian McCaffrey earlier in that draft and I wanted to bring back, in that. And that's the main reason why I had DJ Moore. And then DJ Moore was helpful in advancing, etc. Right. I think that understanding that team composition side of things, there's still a pretty big edge to be had based on some of the experiences that I've had.
Oh yeah. My welcome back to best ball this summer was having Tedero McMillan and Jalen Coker and someone taking a naked Bryce Young. So
yeah, we will be tilting as well all summer long. But yeah, I mean, like the landscape on DraftKings, I wanted to get to this on today's show because I think at a high level, now I've been drafting, I think I've drafted like probably 95 to 100 teams at this point. Not all in the milli. I think I've done 15 milli teams, so I'm still not close to the 150 there. But I drafted some pre-NFL draft teams, and then I've been drafting, ever since. Did a lot of slows. At one point, I think I was in like 55 slows at once, which was, I timed it right because I'm going on a trip this week, and I don't want to have to worry about drafts, and they're all ending right now, which is great. So I don't really have to worry about keeping up with the slows, those slow drafts, because it can be daunting whenever you're in, more than 50. And then there's people out there, shout out Davis Maddock, who will be on late round perspectives this week, but Davis Maddock, who's in like 300 slows at a time. Like this is just the way that his brain has been. He's trying to draft more teams than anyone else in the world this year. That's his goal. But, I'm looking at the landscape right now over on DK. I can't help but notice and think that I think what we're seeing this year is not that dissimilar from last year, where I do think that there's a little bit more of a running back. There's a little bit more running back love in general. But I think you and I both, and especially talking to people last year, we pivoted more off of the consistent zero RB builds from 2 years ago, had a lot more RB type starts or like heavier running back starts. I think we're looking at the same thing. Maybe some more of those running backs are being pushed up a little bit further. But it all makes sense intuitively, in my opinion, just based on what we know about season long and how that would probably translate to best ball. And similar to last year, you have that like round 4 to 5 pocket at wide receiver where you just have breakout potential. Like just so many players that I think are massive values, whether you're talking about Luther or massive, they're values, but they have massive upside. A Luther Burden type, a Ladd McConkey type. I really like both of them a lot this year. Terry McLaurin, I've talked about liking, a decent bit. I think Jalen Waddle's in a good spot. I think Rome Odunze is a good value in round 5, despite liking both Colson Loveland and Luther Burden. Everyone's like, you got to choose one of them. And I'm like, well, if you're making drafting multiple lineups, get exposure to all of them because we think very highly of Ben Johnson and what this offense could do. So I think that round 4 to 5 wide receiver range maybe starts early 4 or late 3, around that range. It was nice whenever Devontae Smith was going in the early 4th. That's not happening anymore. That's a really nice prime spot for these wide receivers, which makes it easier to go running back as like sort of the meta, right? And then what I am seeing now, last year, I feel like when we were drafting these teams, we were noticing in real time the quarterbacks being drafted earlier and earlier, right? And I'm talking about like the mid to low end QB2s and maybe even the low end QB1s to some degree. But the low end QB1s were generally in that like late single digit round range for most of the year. It was really, we started seeing like the Bryce Youngs, like the random, low end QB2 types in the QB3 range being drafted a lot earlier and earlier and earlier. And a lot of that was the scarcity issue of them like drying up and then you being afraid, oh, if the meta is a 3 quarterback build now, which it generally is, especially in DraftKings where you get 20 rounds, other platforms you don't. When you get those extra rounds, it makes it a lot easier to just have 3 quarterbacks, on your roster. That's more outs for stacking. It's more outs for injury. It's more outs just for that general upside. And so if more teams are drafting 3 quarterbacks, that means the position is just drying up faster because there are not 36 starters in the NFL. There's 32, and we don't even know who some of the starters are right now, right? And we probably won't until like mid-August for some of these teams. Like, I don't know when do you think we're going to learn who Cleveland's starter is going to be? Like realistically, like it could realistically be mid-August when we learn who the actual starter of that team is.
And similar to Arizona, even when we're armed with that information, when will there be a switch? Right?
Yeah, right.
Like if they go Deshaun Watson and the Browns predictably stink, when do they take another look at Shedeur Sanders?
Right.
The Cardinals. When do they pull the ripcord and go Carson Beck? So
yeah, what's the Michael Penix timeline look like? Truly,
right.
So there's plenty of these quarterback situations that are up in the air, which you might feel comfortable in May being like, yeah, I'll just get Tua in round 17 or something like that, or Michael Penix in round 18, whatever the case may be. But there's a real risk of those guys just not doing anything, just because we don't know when those guys are going to be playing. And so what I've seen happening, and it's kind of a continuation of last year, is that's pushing up the CJ Strouds of the world, the, Cam Wards, the Bryce Youngs. And I don't mind some of those guys. Like Cam Ward's one of my highest rostered players right now. Just in general, because I think the upside's really interesting, but like it's pushing those guys up. And what that does from a value perspective at quarterback, it makes the round 6 to round 8 quarterback range much more appealing because the opportunity cost isn't as significant when you are then going to have to spend a lot on those lower tiered guys where the opportunity cost would be increasing. Right. And so when you get that sort of like truncated range of where quarterbacks are going, it makes the higher end quarterbacks a little bit more. I'm not necessarily talking about Josh Allen here just because he kind of goes in his own tier. It's a different opportunity cost equation in total. But once you get into round 5, when Lamar starts going, and then, the Caleb stack, the Bears stack start going, and Drake May gets drafted, and Jaden Daniels, and then Jalen Hurts in round 7. When all of that starts going on, you say to yourself, I could get, like today I did a Millie draft and I drafted Caleb Williams in round 6 to stack with Luther Burden and Rome Odunze. And then I got Jalen Hurts because I stacked him with Devontae Smith. And the finished team, I have it on the Discord, it didn't look bad at all, right? Because
it's fine. That's a fine. I'm finding myself go quarterback back to back and being 100% comfortable with it.
Right. And it's wild because, early best ball days, at least, definitely in the last 2 years, we've seen the evolution. But even before that, before we started doing the show, that was just not a common thing to have happen. Like you wouldn't be double tapping quarterback in that way. But I think it's more applicable right now and easier to swallow because the other quarterbacks are going like 3 rounds later that are significantly worse from a projection standpoint. And once you're in that round 6 range, there's a pretty clear drop in a lot of the upside cases at wide receiver, especially, running back, especially once you get past like the really sexy year 2 running backs that we're, interested in, but it could go south, but there's still that upside case for them. Once you get into like where Ramondre's going and stuff and whatnot, you're like, yeah, I mean, he's fine. Like I'm drafting him, but it's a lot more appealing to just get the quarterback, a Jalen Hurts type, where we know the upside's pretty crazy because he's shown that upside. And then not having to worry about that 3 rounds later where there's still not horrific running back and wide receiver options. So that's been something that's very, very real, I think, in this year's landscape at quarterback is it's really a continuation from last year where we're going to have to be we're going to feel like we're reaching a quarterback, but I don't think it's really reaching as much as you think as much as you would think, because those other quarterbacks are also going earlier. It's not like you're reaching for Caleb Williams, but then you can get Bryce Young in round 18. That would be totally different, right? You're getting Bryce Young, not that, like, realistically, given their upside cases and their floor cases, you're getting him not that much after where some of these really good quarterbacks go. So I'm very firmly, in best ball, I always say that, like, my quarterback exposure is generally just tied to the pass catchers that I'm getting anyway. It's not like I'm, singling out certain guys. I think that the one exception this year is probably like Malik Willis, because there are no pass catchers that you're really feeling great about, before you would draft Willis, other than like maybe Devon Achane. But yeah, that's kind of the overall vibe though at quarterback, is that don't be afraid to just get them when you need to get them, or else, like you said, you'll have that double stack and someone will take them from it.
Quarterback is generally an exercise of stack fulfillment, right? You've set up these pieces, and a lot of times the final piece, or at least like the secondary piece, is going to be slotting in that quarterback in. So it makes sense that when people are drafting receivers that they like, they then want to connect it with that quarterback, which is then inflating quote unquote quarterback a little bit. Yeah. And what's challenging is if you are waiting on a quarterback and you don't have pieces in that offense already, it's very challenging to find a break glass in case of emergency stack once you start nearing like the 8th, 9th round. Like there's not like the only one that kind of makes sense, and I think I'm going to have a disgusting amount because I'm a biased loser, is some sort of Geno Cooper Sadiq action, because that's kind of an easy break glass, grab them all late and stick them together. But outside of the Jets, it's challenging to like pivot in the middle of the draft and build the plane while you're flying it.
Yeah, I mean, like, even a team like the Steelers, right? You could maybe make the argument of like I've done like the Rodgers, Pat Freiermuth, sometimes Jeremy Bernard kind of look, more so Pat Freiermuth in that case. But like, yeah, it's still not even like a very appealing situation. It's not like a very obvious stack that you can go to, late. Not that there would be a ton of like really high upside late round stacks, but you're right. I think that the Jets are an interesting case, you run into the same thing with Geno Smith, arguably. I mean, close your ears, Rich, as a Jets fan, but you run into the same thing with Geno Smith, arguably, as you might with Jacoby Brissett. Like, there's a very real possibility that the Jets are bad and that they want to just see what they have in other players down the stretch.
Maybe. I mean, there's no other quarterback on it's going to come down to whether or not
you're not a Klubnik guy. You're not.
Well, it's going to come down to whether or not. So if Klubnik, again, this is where we can learn something over the summer, but we won't learn it until closer to the end of the summer. Right. If Klubnik is the bang on number 2, you're right. There are outs to Klubnik.
That would be the assumption in this case. Yes.
Yeah. But if he, and it's actually good the way it's set up, because I mean, if he can't beat out Bailey Zappi, like, what are we doing here? Then you're like, you're never gonna have a chance to play.
Right.
But yeah, to your point, even that, it's disgusting. Like, get your quarterbacks, guys. That's the only thing that
Agreed.
I want to be impressed with.
You do have to think about that stability, though, is really the greater point. Like, I don't want to make it seem like I feel like Geno equals Jacoby Brissett, because I think the Arizona situation is a lot more fragile than the Jet situation. I'm just saying there's an out here where Geno does not necessarily play like week 16 to 17, 18, right? Like there's like a possibility of that happening where you don't have that. Like, I feel less of that happening with a Cam Ward type, where they're going to just need to give him the full season. They need to see what they have to be able to make a decision after this year. And there's obviously more upside with a guy like Ward than there would be Geno. But yeah, it's a really, really tough thing to find those late stacks. But I would roll that into, it's hard in general to find, like, this is the last thing I want to talk about the landscape right now. It's really hard to find good late round picks. I'm going to talk about some players later on in the show in just a minute, but I might be hyperbolic in a way here when I say this, but it does feel like the round 17 to 20 players are worse this year than in previous years. And I think a lot of that probably has to do with the comfort of the rookie class. It's a class where, I mean, I said it during prospecting season. I said it after the draft. We have a lot of wide receivers that are viable, but they are very mid, as the kids say, right? There's just not a lot of like standout, obvious, I love this day 2 wide receiver type players that I'm going to draft a lot. There's some, I'm going to talk about one, but there aren't a ton of them that I feel super, super great about. And then at running back, it was arguably the weakest class that we've seen. I mean, at least since that one a couple of years ago. But even when you look at the landscape over the last 15 years, those two are two of the worst that we've seen. If not for Jeremiah Love, this class would be even like way, way more putrid. And we saw that through draft capital. We just didn't see the same amount of running backs, drafted early or drafted in general. And then you get guys like Kaelon Black, who, gets the draft capital, but has question marks as a profile, from a analytics standpoint and from a profile standpoint. So my general stance is that it's pretty difficult to rely on some late round picks. With that being said, I think if there's one position that you can rely on very late, right now, my feeling is probably tight end. I don't mind some of the high upside late round darts, and you can go with 4 tight end builds on DraftKings, which makes it nice. Like you can go that route if you do indeed, don't invest in the position until round 15. You can just get 4 tight ends, and there are, some viable guys up through round 20 that you can go after.
This is 100%, and this is what I was alluding to at the top. We've seen the NFL change its focus to the tight end position with a lot more 12, and in the Rams case, running a bunch of 13. And what I'm feeling in these drafts, these running backs and receivers in the late double-digit rounds, they're just disgusting. And
they're gross.
There are so many outs to you not getting any production from these players. Even before we bring in injury, right? Mm-hmm. Will these guys see the field? And if they do see the field, can they even be good enough to be productive in the NFL? Couple that with the increase of tight end usage. And then even before this season, we see a massive dedication of draft capital throughout the draft from multiple teams to this position, which led me to the same thing after my first half dozen drafts of I'm going to be very comfortable waiting on tight end, and then just at the end, just spraying a bunch of picks at tight end, because we're getting this combination of guys that are going to see the field because teams are rolling out 12. And then there's also pathways through injury or through production for some of these guys to just have really good seasons too. Like the type of draft capital that was just put in Eli Stowers, and the AJ Brown departing, there's a path to him being very useful for the Eagles this season. And you can get him in the 17th round right now.
Right. It's crazy because, if you guys listen to my stuff during the pre-draft process, you know that Zachariah Branch was someone that I was not super, super into because of the way that he was deployed and his production profile really wasn't that great. He falls into a pretty good spot in Atlanta where I think something can happen. And I basically ended up at market with Zachariah Branch at the end of the day, which is why sometimes I regret having super strong takes pre-draft, because I know there's going to be someone out there that's like, oh, you hated this guy. Yeah, I didn't like him as a prospect. That's for sure. But situation and landing spot still matter. But it's crazy that a player like that I objectively think is a very average to below average prospect for where he was drafted, is someone that I'm still taking in best ball in the 19th, 20th round, because that's just how weak that whole, I'm drafting Jalen Tolbert right now. It's just gross at the non-tight end positions. But we'll talk about some players late that I am going after in just a second.
For adults with Crohn's disease or ulcerative colitis symptoms, every choice matters. Tremfya offers self-injection or intravenous infusion from the start. Tremfya is administered as injections under the skin or infusions through a vein every 4 weeks, followed by injections under the skin every 4 or 8 weeks. If your doctor decides that you can self-inject Tremfya, proper training is required. Tremfya is a prescription medicine used to treat adults with moderately to severely active Crohn's disease and adults with moderately to severely active ulcerative colitis. Serious allergic reactions, increased risk of infections or lower ability to fight them, and liver problems may occur. Before treatment, get checked for infections and tuberculosis. Tell your doctor if you have an infection, flu-like symptoms, or need a vaccine. Explore what's possible. Ask your doctor about Tremfya today. Call 1-800-526-7736 to learn more, or visit tremfyaradio.com.
Hi, I'm Steph, and I work at United Healthcare. When I think about United Healthcare's members, I think of my own family. My niece was diagnosed with an ultra-rare genetic disorder. I know how hard it is for families. At United Healthcare, we can make it easier.
I'm Brian. I care because I know what it's like to not speak the language. It's not easy. Health insurance is complicated. I would say our job is to make everything easy for our UHC members. I work for United Healthcare. I'm committed to care.
The one thing I do want to touch on is how I've approached things so far. And I'm going to hear sort of if you have seen things similarly and you're drafting things similarly. I think we're back to it like a 3 quarterback, 5 or 6 running back, 8 or 9 wide receiver, 3 tight end build as sort of the meta, the baseline, the go-to. The thing is, I'm getting a lot of 5 running back teams because I'm investing in running back early. Like I'm often going running back, or, I was drafting some Josh Jacobs, in round 3. He was like the most, the easiest in my opinion to get, at that point. Obviously things have changed a little bit with his ADP and the off the field stuff, but regardless, like I think that a running back start is intuitive, makes a lot of sense. And then you can kind of choose your own adventure in round 4 and 5. Like you could realistically get a third running back as early as round 4 in that case, whether it's like a Javonte for some stability or David Montgomery or Cam Scadaboo if you want to risk the injury, or, then you get into that 5-6 range. There's nothing better than having Travion Henderson or Bashal Tutin as an RB3 on your team. Like that's going to be the case in season long, but that's also the case in best ball where that's like the perfect scenario. Now, if you do that, then you have to adjust and say, okay, I won't get Tyler Warren in the 6th. I'll pound wide receiver because I don't want to fall behind at wide receiver, all that stuff, right? Like we'll get into that as the summer goes on about how, balancing your team and, investments early mean less investment late, all that kind of stuff. But I do think a 5 running back build is going to be a little bit more common for me this year than it was last year, even probably in half and half, 5 and 6, just depending on how I'm investing in the running back position. But it's more of like a 3, 5 or 6, 8 or 9, and then 3 build. And then, like I said, feeling okay about some of those late round tight ends, which makes going 3 or 4 sometimes a little bit easier.
When you brought up 4 tight ends, I got excited. That's something I haven't even played around with. But the thing about going early running back and then going fewer running backs is, again, I don't want to be in round 18 looking at Chris Brooks and James Conner and being I need to throw somebody in my running back room. Like, I don't think that is a wise way to approach this, right?
Yeah, and I'm still doing it because sometimes you're forced to. Sometimes you're like, oh, well, I didn't address this as much as I should have earlier on, and so all of a sudden I've got to draft and take a chance that Josh Jacobs doesn't play and that they don't, because like even in these scenarios, right? Like for James Conner to hit, for instance, you probably need, ideally need a trade, right? Like that's or like a serious injury or two. But like that's the way that pans out. For Chris Brooks to really pan out, it's Josh Jacobs gets suspended and they don't sign it or trade for somebody, which I think they would in the scenario if Josh Jacobs were to be sidelined in any way, because it's obviously a competitive team and they have one of the worst depth charts behind their starter in the NFL right now. It's just there's not much going on there at all.
All these running backs and receivers in the late double-digit rounds need a parlay to have any type of success. Whereas the tight ends are going to be on the field and can just fall in the end zone.
You can make the argument that this is something that we will see every year and but I don't agree totally. I think this year's worse. There have been other seasons where we at least knew some of these wide receivers were going to be out there in 2 wide receiver sets, or some of these running backs had like a very clear backup role, that we felt strongly about, and that we could go after that player. I just don't feel that way at all right now. And maybe we get some more clarity as the summer goes on. Maybe it is just the timing of it. We're recording this on June 2nd. It's going on June 3rd. And so, maybe that's all going to play some role in making us feel more comfortable. But right now, today, I think that you do need to feel a little more stable. Like if you can get to round 18, that's what I kind of felt like today with the draft that I had posted on Discord. If you can get to round 18 and be like, this is a complete team, I can just do whatever I want in the last 2 or 3 rounds. That's where you need to be, I think, this time of year.
I think your point about a trade, I think we just need to be prayer circle. We need Tank Dell to get traded. We need James Conner to get traded. We need these guys that Kayshon Boutte, come on, where's he going? Like, we need these guys to go to some exciting teams.
By the way, but those players, I think Stefon Diggs right now is a great pick, because anywhere Stefon Diggs goes, he's going to see an uptick in ADP. We see this all the time, right? So draft Stephon Diggs. I've been throwing darts at Kayshon Boutte because what if like Boutte goes almost anywhere? He probably is going to be drafted higher than where he's being drafted right now, more than likely. And I think that there's some spots like a Washington, for instance, where we're all assuming that their other perimeter guys are going to be like Ayuk and maybe even like a Diggs. But what if it is Kayshon Boutte? I think Boutte works really well with what they need. Like that's kind of the perfect type of player to add to their arsenal, to just have something, which would hurt a guy I'm going to talk about here in a second. Maybe we should just kick that off right now and just talk about some players that I feel like this is what we do to start becoming Best Ball Bro every year, just to give you guys a little sneak peek as to what my exposure looks like right now. But since I'm talking about Washington, I'll just talk about Antonio Williams. Like I have a lot of Antonio Williams. I got a lot of him pre-draft. He was one of the players in the, when I talked on the late round show about rookies to get in best ball based on my rankings and what ADP was saying. Antonio Williams was the biggest gap at that point pre-draft, because I don't think that the market at that time realized that he was going to get good draft capital. But Antonio Williams himself wasn't a bad prospect. I don't think he was like phenomenal, but he had a pretty decent age-adjusted production profile where he got production immediately in college. It just didn't give us, he never gave us that like spike season. You know, it never got tremendously better. But his top comp in the ZAP model was Ladd McConkey. A lot of that had to do with the fact that McConkey, I don't use yards per route run for various reasons in the ZAP model, but McConkey was a good per route run guy, and Antonio Williams was not that nearly to that degree. So take that with a grain of salt. But the, breakout score stuff looked relatively similar. They have a versatile profile where I value players who get a little bit of rushing work and are deployed in different ways. And then post draft, they talked about Antonio Williams. Like a lot of people were like, oh, he's just a slot, but he got good, like decent draft capital, day 2 draft capital. And Washington talked about using Antonio Williams as their Z. And so right now today, we're making the assumption they're going to like change something and add something. We just did that a second ago and talking about Kayshon Boutte, but there's a real chance that Antonio Williams is just their number 2 wide receiver this year. And even if he gets competition, like Ayuk or something goes there, not only is there like a lot of variance and volatility with a player like Brandon Ayuk, because we haven't seen him play in so long and he's had some off the field stuff, but there's that going on. We have no idea how good or bad he would be, but even if he's like decent, there's still some room for Antonio Williams to give us some production in some spiked weeks.
Washington fun too, because you can go naked Jaden in the 6th and then just kind of pump the brakes a little bit if you want. And then you can just grab Antonio and Chig right there in the mid double digit rounds. So that's one of those where you can be a little bit more flexible if you do go naked Jaden, who, fingers crossed, I mean, from a watching football perspective, I think we all want him to have a bounce back third season because he was electric as a rookie.
For sure. Next guy I'm going to talk about, Ladd McConkey. This isn't surprising to anyone who's been listening to the show. We're going to see non-11 personnel more frequently in LA, even though Greg Roman, is a power guy. We still, if you look at Mike McDaniel's offenses, historically, he'll use some 2 tight end sets, and heavier personnel from that perspective, but he's a big fullback guy. And so you're going to see more and more 2 and even 1 wide receiver looks from the Chargers. And I've referenced the Ryan Heath article that I had tweeted out like a couple weeks ago when he wrote that, but there's a really good stat in there about how Ladd McConkey ran very few routes with 1 or 2 wide receivers on the field, including him. Whereas Jalen Waddle saw that on like 45 to 50% of his routes run last season. And so I think that there's a very real chance that we see McConkey, just get more directed targets in this offense. And it's an offense that's going to be getting back their offensive line. They're 2 tackles it's huge for what they could do offensively. I mean, the splits, it's a small sample, but the splits with and without Alt last year for Justin Herbert, insane, absolutely crazy. Right. And so I think that the Chargers, like, yes, it's kind of a bandwagon-y thing and like a chalky thing to say and do, but I don't really think ADP is reflecting it enough. I have a ton of Justin Herbert.
Herbert's still in the 7th, QJ's in the 8th. Like, right. I feel like we should be Mike McDaniel, what he did with a flawed quarterback in Tua Tagovailoa and having the most efficient offense in the sport for a season, probably multiple seasons. Like, I don't think it's reflected whatsoever in ADP.
Yeah, like, and I'm not saying that like I understand why Ladd is going where he's going, but I like him at the top of that tier versus more in the middle of that tier. Or like QJ's fine. I have a ton of Trey Harris right now because I think there's a chance that he just sees some work, and he's one of the few like 18th round wide receivers that I actually think is going to see some production for us. That like I feel good about a floor for him this year because I think he'll get like something in what is a good offense. And then I'll just move this to Keaton Mitchell because he's another guy in this list. Now, obviously Mitchell is probably a better in best ball guy because he, has the big playability that he has. I don't know if his receiving upside is immense just in general. And obviously Amari and Hampton's there. I like Hampton. I'm not overweight or underweight on Hampton just because I like some of the other running backs that go in that range. But Keaton Mitchell, I have a ton of Keaton Mitchell because the fit with McDaniel, who loves speed. I mean, we saw that with the Brendan Thompson pick and, him going out. There was even the video that the Chargers posted afterwards of Mike McDaniel saying, we need to get Brendan Thompson. Can I get Brendan Thompson? And they went and drafted him. Keaton Mitchell's a speed guy. And to me, he's a perfect complement to Amari and Hampton. I mean, it's a crazy 1-2 punch. And I know Kamani Vidal is still there, who had a great season last year. And I've been someone who likes Vidal as a player, but Keaton Mitchell and his speed behind a good offensive line when healthy in a really elite offense potentially could bring us like multiple spiked weeks. And so when I am looking for that just like fun, random upside running back, where obviously if an injury happens to Amari and Hampton, Keaton Mitchell wouldn't become the bell cow, but he would see a little bit more work. I'm just attaching the running back to a really good offense. So I have a ton of Keaton Mitchell right now too.
The other thing about the Chargers is with them playing the Chiefs in week 17, nobody wants to touch Rashee Rice with a 50-foot pole.
True.
Everybody's worried about Mahomes off the ACL. Everybody thinks Travis Kelce is completely washed. So like Chiefs Chargers is one of the most affordable stacks right now. And it could be an electric game with two good offenses.
Yeah, absolutely.
For adults with Crohn's disease or ulcerative colitis symptoms, every choice matters. Tremfya offers self-injection or intravenous infusion from the start. Tremfya is administered as injections under the skin or infusions through a vein every 4 weeks, followed by injections under the skin every 4 or 8 weeks. If your doctor decides that you can self-inject Tremfya, proper training is required. Tremfya is a prescription medicine used to treat adults with moderately to severely active Crohn's disease and adults with moderately to severely active ulcerative colitis. Serious allergic reactions, increased risk of infections or lower ability to fight them, and liver problems may occur. Before treatment, get checked for infections and tuberculosis. Tell your doctor if you have an infection, flu-like symptoms, or need a vaccine. Explore what's possible. Ask your doctor about Tremfya today. Call 1-800-526-7736 to learn more or visit tremfyaradio.com.
Hi, I'm Steph, and I work at United Healthcare. When I think about United Healthcare's members, I think of my own family. My niece was diagnosed with an ultra-rare genetic disorder. I know how hard it is for families. At United Healthcare, we can make it easier.
I'm Brian. I care because I know what it's like to not speak the language. It's not easy. Health insurance is complicated. I would say our job is to make everything easy for our UHC members. I work for United Healthcare. I'm committed to care.
Another later round guy, I've been drafting Jonah Coleman. J.K. Dobbins, frequently injured. Jonah Coleman, solid prospect. He's do it all. RJ Harvey has some question marks. I think it's a good environment. I'm not going to be surprised if this is a 3-headed backfield. I think RJ Harvey has the most upside still in the backfield. Oddly, I've kind of, I've been like very anti RJ Harvey throughout the offseason and calling him a sell and such, like back in January. But I actually don't think RJ Harvey is like that horrific of a click right now, given the drop that we see in running back and just given that range. Like I said, I like some of the quarterbacks in that range in general and just kind of like building that way. But I don't think RJ Harvey is that bad of a pick. I'm more afraid of J.K. Dobbins, where Dobbins is obviously hurt a lot. He's more of the early down guy, and Jonah Coleman can play that. I mean, Jonah Coleman's the biggest running back on that team now. And I think that he can play that role, be a goal line back as well, potentially, and where is Dobbins' upside really coming from is my question. Like, he had a 4% target share last year. Like he's not deployed as a receiver, and this is a full PPR platform. So I've mostly, I was in on Dobbins last year at his cost, but I've faded Dobbins this year. because of all of that. It's just a very scary profile in my opinion. So Jonah Coleman as a later round pick, I do like a decent bit. I'll move on to another running back that I think everyone should be clicking more of. That's Sean Tucker in the late rounds. Bucky Irving has the question marks that he has. No one on that roster in that backfield is quite like Sean Tucker in terms of being more of a between the tackles bruiser. I think that he can be a pass catcher. He actually did that in college quite well, and he was an all around back. Sean Tucker is one of the best Zap model running backs for an undrafted guy. And the reason he went undrafted is because he had that heart condition. And so he's done well at times throughout his career when he's gotten more work. Towards the end of last year, he was their goal line guy, which I think could happen again this year with Bucky Irving having question marks health-wise and Kenneth Gainwell just not being that kind of player. So I think Sean Tucker, again, one of the very, very few running backs you can get very late that should give you some sort of floor, in that offense. The biggest question mark is that they have Zach Robinson now, and who knows what that offense is truly going to look like. But, there is still some stability with the coaching staff there, and they might have some input on what they should be doing with Sean Tucker.
Sean Tucker has proof of concept. The running backs around him are all mid rookies who were going to be grasping for straws to see what their productivity is going to be in their offenses, right? Nick Singleton, Emmett Johnson, Mike Washington, Kaytron Allen. What are these guys going to be? We don't know. So at least with Tucker, we have proof of concept.
Realistically, maybe I shouldn't, because this is off the dome. Okay. But realistically, I feel like Sean Tucker's 60th to 70th percentile outcome is Kaytron Allen's 90th percentile outcome, right? Because it's the same kind of use case here, right? Where you are looking at an early down bruiser. And yes, there's a easier depth chart to climb for Kaytron Allen than Sean Tucker. And maybe it ends up being a better environment, but we do have that proof of concept, like you're saying, for Tucker in the NFL and already having proven that. So yeah, it's an interesting discussion to have for sure. The other thing I want to talk about is another player is Tyler Warren, who I didn't really expect to be in on this year, but you get to that 6th round range and there's a drop off at basically every position. And if you're not stacking at quarterback right there, then it's really easy to get the tight end and, get a guy who really there's not many alternatives in Indianapolis. I like Josh Downs a lot too. I don't mind Alec Pierce, which I thought I was going to be out on Alec Pierce, but his price has been totally reasonable, surprisingly, this offseason. But those are the only 3 guys that we're really worried about from a pass catching standpoint in Indianapolis right now. Tyler Warren should get a lot of manufactured touches. His splits with and without Daniel Jones were massive last year. He was great with Daniel Jones. So I like Tyler Warren in that 6th round range.
Realistically, shouldn't him and Colston Loveland be closer in ADP?
Probably. I have a hard time with Loveland from not from the stand. He's one of the hardest players to rank for me. So I don't mean a hard time drafting him. I mean a hard time knowing exactly where he should go. It's difficult because the upside is crazy for Colston Loveland. I think Colston Loveland could very easily be the next big fantasy, the next Travis Kelce type player, the breaking fantasy football type guy. And I don't want to miss out on that. So I'm not going to be below market on Colston Loveland, I don't think, this year, or at least, immensely below. The environment's great. We saw, his usage down the stretch and in the playoffs was crazy. Right. And so, but I do agree that Tyler Warren is undervalued and should be closer to that Loveland ADP. It's just that I think Loveland could even go higher realistically, depending on how you want to build. The problem is that we talked about tight ends already and why maybe going elite tight end isn't as easy in this scenario right now, just because we don't have as much information about the late round guys, about the late round running backs and wide receivers.
Yeah. The difference between Colston, you're competing, are you going to take Garrett Wilson or T-Mac there? Whereas you're competing, like you said, with a lot less down with Tyler Warren.
Yes. All right. I'll go through a few more and then we got to get out of here. Chris Godwin. I've been drafting a lot of him coming off that brutal injury last year. It's expected that he wasn't going to have crazy great numbers, but that the Zach Robinson tie to Godwin potentially playing the slot and that being a pretty favorable area for Robinson wide receivers and it being kind of a dead area in the draft at running back and wide receiver. I think Godwin's going to be able to give us some love. We're seeing, understandably so, Ibuka's been rising even more. He's Emeka Ibuka is the guy in drafts, for whatever reason, is the one in round 4 who wasn't in round 4 who's risen the most from all of the chaos going on with Rashee Rice, Josh Jacobs, the AJ Brown stuff, all that. For some reason, Emeka Egbuka is the one that's been rising the most from an ADP perspective. And maybe it's a little bit of the coach speak stuff or what have you. And maybe it's a groupthink thing, but I don't want to forget about Chris Godwin through all that. You guys know that I'm a big Emeka Egbuka fan, but I don't want to lose sight of the fact that Godwin is playing without Mike Evans this year. Like Mike Evans is gone, and Godwin has a very reasonable ADP, even considering he might not blow up. He might not be incredible, but 2 years ago, before that devastating injury, he was a top 3 wide receiver in the NFL. He was going nuts. He was blowing up himself as a player before the leg did. And so I'm really hoping that Godwin has a nice little bounce back. So I've been drafting him. I got Devontae Smith pretty high right now. I was drafting him a lot before the AJ Brown thing. I'm shocked that AJ Brown has been moving as much as he has post trade already. And this is 24 hours basically after that trade was announced, but I've seen him go in round 2, like mid round 2 consistently. Some people have said they draft him over Drake London. I'm shocked by that. Like, I didn't think that I knew his ADP would move just because that's the way that drafters draft. I just didn't think it would move that significantly. I do have him a tier ahead of Devontae Smith, but I love Devontae Smith as a player. And I think that he can easily take a step forward without AJ Brown. His splits without either Goddard or AJ Brown historically have been great. And I'm really a fan of what this new offense, like, we can't undersell how bad Kevin Patullo was last year, right? Like, it was really, really bad. So Devontae Smith is one. 2 more. I'll give you 2 late round tight end darts. I did mention Pat Freiermuth. I don't have him listed on here. The 2 that I've been going to most are Greg Dulcich, who market score, if you guys listen to the
Malik's favorite. Malik's favorite target ever.
Apparently Malik Willis' favorite receiver right now. Greg Dulcich had a really, really efficient 2025 season. He was not a bad prospect. At one point 3 years ago, I think I was in on him as a late round tight end.
I think the first short I ever made for you was a Greg Dulcich.
Was it?
I believe so.
Yeah, that's a big L on my behalf. But regardless, we're back, baby. We're back on Greg Dulcich. When it's a 17th to 20th round pick, why not? Whenever there's an open room, like, we should be looking for open pass catching rooms for our tight ends. So that's one. And I can't quit Terrence Ferguson. I think Max Clare is a really good tight end prospect, but the way that Sean McVay has historically slow played his rookies, what they did with Terrence Ferguson even last year, and Ferguson was good last year when he got some opportunity. I think Ferguson makes more sense over Colby Parkinson. When Parkinson often has the higher, it will go earlier and has the higher ADP. So I'm going after Ferguson because I think the athleticism profile, the athletic profile is there, the athleticism's there. The production was fine enough last year for a rookie tight end, and they're a heavy team. There's no wide receiver 3 on that team that we feel concerned about or worried about taking some of these looks. And I think Ferguson's probably the most natural, like, young up and coming athletic tight end pass catcher that they have on that team right now. So I'm going after Ferguson and just attaching him to one of the best offenses probably the best team now in football after that Myles Garrett trade.
Yeah, insane stuff. I love that all 4 Rams tight ends are being drafted though, because nobody wants to put any faith in either Whittingham or Mumpfield having any impact if there's a receiver injury. They're just going to bring in another tight end. They're just
going to use tight. I mean, look, McVay, I've said this a lot with the 12 personnel discussion, but like, the genius of what the Rams were able to do last year, this is not a just put tight ends on the field and everything will be fine. This is you're putting versatile tight ends on the field so that they're able to do things pre-snap, and they're able, they'll run Terrence Ferguson as the X at times, they'll do crazy stuff. And that's why he's valuable. Max Clare is a really good all around tight end who's going to allow them to have that versatility. And that's what really makes the transition to heavier personnel so effective against defenses these days. It's not simply like, we're going to this is just smash mouth football and we're going to beat you with this. The teams that are doing it effectively are doing it effectively with very specific personnel. And I am a believer that Terrence Ferguson is a player who fits that personnel if things hit right. It might not hit right. Chances are it won't. There's better odds that he doesn't hit than does, right? But I do think that intuitively, he is a player that fits this mold of this new wave in the NFL very, very well.
He passed the eye test last year. Every time he was targeted, it was like, man, why can't they get Terrence Ferguson the ball more?
Yeah. But anyway, all right, that's it for the guys. That's it for the show, Rich. For episode 1 of season 3 of Becoming a Best Ball Bro. Let everyone know where they can find you, what you're doing, because you got other shows and other things you're working on as well. And shout that out.
Yep. Rich T. Ryan across all platforms. I'll see you guys. I'm lurking in the Late Round Discord, and then at Gridiron Gamble, ramping up for another fun sports betting season in the NFL.
Yes, sir. And as always, you can follow me on Twitter, on Blue Sky, at Late Round QB. Most importantly, make sure you're checking out the new lateround.com, because you can pre-order the draft guide. You can become a member. There's an all access tier now where you get membership rankings, etc., all the things that are part of that subscription, but also the prospect and draft guides. You'll get that yearly if you're an all access member. It's been great. I mean, it's a process to kind of migrate, because we were on Patreon before. We're migrating people over. David Kitchen is working his butt off to get people over to the new lateround.com. But for real, guys, we're innovating, and we're trying to do more and more with that site, and we're listening to feedback to fix things up and to make it the best experience that you can. And most importantly, we have an awesome community on Discord that Rich was just referencing, where you can talk ball with all those folks. So check that out, lateround.com. Otherwise, everyone, thanks for tuning in.
Running a business shouldn't feel like surviving a software group project. One app for accounting, another for inventory, another for sales, and somehow none of them talk to each other. That's where Odoo comes in, an all-in-one business management software that brings every part of your business together, from sales and accounting to inventory and marketing, all in one powerful platform. No messy integrations, no bouncing between tabs, and best of all, no spreadsheets. Stop managing software and start managing your business with one unified system. Try for free today at odoo.com/iHeartRadio. That's odoo.com/iHeartRadio.
Fill your tank and fill yourself with new experiences. With old friends, new ones, and the next generation ready to ride. Get to living with Harley-Davidson motorcycles. When the week is still in motion, but your mind is on the open road, grab your helmet and remember why you want to ride. Visit Low Country Harley-Davidson and see what freedom looks like. Tap the screen now and start your ride at h-d.com/ride. Harley-Davidson Motorcycles. Ride.
This is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed Human.